You don't know where your next champion is going to come from. We've heard a lot of talk about what we're doing at the pro level, but I think that the consensus is that, yeah, we've talked about the Jamaican system, but many countries have the capacity to really do a better job at the high school level, and then from that, we will see many athletes in many different events, many of which we can't foresee, doing better. Is this something that that you think is that going to work?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the things that we discussed about yesterday was just this unique opportunity for athletics. Because of the lowest barrier to entry is just to run. You don't necessarily need courts. Or athletics has this unique opportunity to find people from anywhere at any time, boys, girls. It's just this uniquely talented individuals. And, you know, back to your various stories and where people have come from in various events, you do never know where they're going to come from. But I think it's just such a fantastic opportunity for the sport. That's what excites me about it.
Elana.
I think with the international, like kids athletics, there's a huge opportunity with giving kids at a young age the opportunity to do all the disciplines, you know, and then it's really back to what both you and Jackie said. It's somebody that came up to you and say, like, I believe you can run.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 11 years old, you know, it was a coach that said, you know, one day that thing can have a springbok on. You know, so it really is to expose the kids at a young age at all the different disciplines, and then the eyes to see that one can.
Point 4 is sort of further to point 3, and that is the Jamaican model. What is it the Jamaicans we agreed do it better than anybody else in the world, but what can regionally, nationally, and internationally the rest of us learn from what they do so well?
Where's the funding coming for the Jamaica system?
Corporate Jamaica.
I'll tell you right now, for instance, the Honolulu Marathon is the sponsor for the Hawaii State Track and Field High School Championships. The guys that run the Honolulu Marathon were former runners at the University of Michigan, so it's in their heart, it's in their blood. So they just, even though they've 25,000 runners and 17,000 in Japan and a huge economic impact at the Honolulu Marathon, they're pouring it back into that high school level track and field. There's no direct association with the marathon, but they see that corporate sponsorship from the major, shareholders in the sport itself.
I think, as well, and even from a Kenyan perspective, you were talking about it a bit earlier, about that the majority of Kenyan athletes come from a very particular area. And I think, and maybe Wilson can answer this best of all of us here, but certainly my impression, having been up there, that the school system and the youth system in that particular area works.
Of course.
And it's driven by the community. So in some respects, we've gone for Jamaica as a country. I think this does exist in pockets, and those pockets of 1 million people are generating 30, 40 gold medalists.
Let me just answer. Chris needs an opportunity to answer this, but just want to point out something. There's a little thing called the Commonwealth, and we all used to belong to it at some stage.
Don't we still belong to it?
We still?
In as far as they implemented a school system.
Yes.
That happens to be the same in Kenya and in South Africa
and Trinidad
in Jamaica.
Tobago. Yes.
So let's find the thread, and one of those threads is that we used to have sport at school as an institution, and we used to compete against each other. So I don't understand why it's been taken away. So we had some lofty ambitions. Somebody in the crowd said, can we stage a Diamond League in South Africa? We can. But before we do that, we need to get that right before we worry about Diamond Leagues.
100%.
Absolutely.
So I think what the KZN Federation has done is host, Sele, if I'm correct, probably the biggest schools relay event in Africa, if I'm correct with the statistics, just recently, and the Comrades Marathon Association funded it, much like your model. So look, where the funding comes from, that's a different debate, but the reality is that 15, 20 years ago, there used to be a competition in South Africa where the schools competed in various events. You had 10 athletes make up a team, and you competed on behalf of your team. You did it on a regional basis, then a provincial basis, then you went to the national championships. It did, however, favor obviously the privileged schools, and that's obviously a challenge. But if you have on the one hand the relay meetings on a national basis or regional basis, and then you also give the athletes that are perhaps slightly more advanced technically because the schools they go to provide more facilities, a competition like that as well. It has been done before. So it's not like we're trying to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
It's a question of just doing it again.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you try to see how the Kenyan way of doing, of promoting the young talents in schools and in high schools, you find that, for example, in a school whereby I grew up, I studied, you find that it's like every day you have to run. Because from this, you have to beat the time that is there, maybe early in the morning, children has to come by a certain time. And you find that there's no cars that has to bring the children. So it's like you have to run, and before you go home, at around 4, there's a session whereby you have to, all the athletes or all the peoples have to go for a run. So you have to run, it's like a cross-country route, and then after coming back, you have to stretch. Thereafter, now you can come back to the parade, and then you are released to go home. So it's something that you find that it is there all through in the school. And then during the second term now is whereby we have the competitions for the primary schools. This is school competing with another one, but leave alone even in the schools. Within the school, in the class.
Yes.
Class 2 competing with class 3. Class 4 competing with class 5. Class 7 competing with class 6. So there's that kind of competition. You find that the children really want to compete. Today I beat you, maybe next week you beat me. And it becomes that kind of culture. You find that by the time the pupil is in high school, 14, 15, everything is it's just a part of it, part of him. So by the time he now wants to be like Kipsang, he knows the teachers will have really so that this pupil is good. This one is good. Because even for somebody like me, you find that I could compete with little training and position 1, 2 with no training. So you find that teachers could really see this one, if he's given a little attention and training, he can go very far. Because they have time to track your performance. How was his performance in class 3, class 4, class 5? By the time you finish class 8, you go to high school. And then they can see this one has the talent, this one is good in football, this one is good in this one, high jump. You just, as you grow up, there's that kind of progression. That is why you find that in the zone whereby, like now, the Rift Valley, many athletes come from there. Mainly it is because of their lifestyle. The lifestyle and culture, way of doing things at home, everything you have to run. If it is your duty today on Saturday to look after cows, you just leave in the morning, you are given packed lunch, and you take your cows. By the time you come in the evening, you'll have walked like 70 kilometers. That is training.
Training without calling it training.
I don't know if it was you or Jackie yesterday that said kids have got soft. Kids aren't soft in a ting.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's move on to number 5. Restaging competition to unite athletes and increase fan engagement. In my speech, this is what I was talking about with the Chariots of Fire problem, where we are trying to present our sport, which we all love, in a way that is no different than it was 50, 60, 100 years ago. While tastes change, the world has changed. Who wants to weigh in on this and what we can begin to do to make athletics look like a 21st century sport?
Well, part of what you can, I mean, just look at what we're doing right here, right now. We're wrapping this thing up in order to what? Go watch our 2 teams play big games. Why aren't we the big game? But we're not going to go watch a bunch of, we're not having an exhibition of soccer kicks from different distances. We're playing a game. We're keeping score. Somebody's going to win. That's the traditional way of people taking in sport. In the 19th century, when you had a lot of leisure time and you could walk your cows for 20 kilometers, you could afford to spend 3 or 4 hours watching a full track meet.
Right.
People don't have that time anymore. Therefore, how do we make it more relevant? The athleticism that we'll see this afternoon with the Bafana Bafana and Springboks is certainly no better than who's sitting at this little table.
Absolutely.
So it's not them.
Presentation.
It's presentation.
I think the question that needs to be asked is whose job is it to do that? So is it the job of a federation to develop the sport, look after the technical side, and select teams, and then still do the commercialization? Or does one say, as the owner and the rights holder of the sport, perhaps that's not our core competency, we need to have a separate structure for that? Now, we can't make that decision, but the reality, it's not happening at the moment. So either corporate South Africa, in terms of agencies and companies that Kelvin works for, and now working with the Kenyan Federation, need to get involved to create the resources. And then you need marketing minds in there to say, look, 100 meters is 100 meters. It tastes the same, it looks the same, but you can package it differently.
Yes.
And you can sell it differently, because it's no different to a Coke. A Coke comes out in different bottles, it's all the same mixture, but every year there's a different campaign. Same thing, but just packaged differently. So you need some marketing minds to help repackage the sport.
I think
Spencer, yes?
the key thing is, to Chris's point, is I think we should stop following, we need to lead.
Amen to that. There is sufficient fan interest in the sports of athletics in Africa. And I think this goes back to, somebody made the point that in a continent that is rich with Olympic and world champions and world record holders, there should be no empty seats when there is an athletics meeting. Athletics is a commercially viable proposition for the growing broadcast market in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, there was just some of the stuff I was chatting about yesterday is the fastest growing broadcast market in the world in the next 15 years will be Africa. Mostly because everyone else has done their growing and they're going into other things. Athletics has a massive fan base on the continent. It's got a natural interest. There's huge opportunity for the sport. The sport is set up at a number of levels, from mass participation levels to track and field, if we can repackage it and make it interesting, or more interesting. So the opportunity is there. It's just an incredible time to be in athletics, in my view.
Yes. There is a significant track record of athletic excellence on the continent. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think it's leveled off either. I think it's going to continue. If we were charting it on a graph, it's going to continue to do this.
You know, I think you were talking about it earlier, and very soon. You take Kenya for an example, and starting to say, when is a 400-meter athlete coming out of Kenya? We've had a javeliner. We're going to start seeing other athletes coming out of Kenya. We've spoken about South Africa. I mean, I think you were surprised to hear some of the athletic success.
Right.
100-meter record, 100-meter golds at the Olympics 100 years ago. And we can go across the continent. You can go west, you can go east, you can go north, you can go south. The continent's producing athletes in all sorts of disciplines.
Yeah. Mass participation events are a unique opportunity for athletics in Africa. We had some discussions yesterday as to what some of the road organizing folks are doing, that we need to just sort of swallow our pride and say, you know what? Spencer, I know you said lead rather than follow, but there's certainly certain things that we can adopt that they are. I mean, look at how popular road racing is in not just this country, but in the world.
I was thinking one of the things is, I mean, we've seen it with the city games in the British
Right.
model, bring track to the roads, but roads to the track. So if you have a track meet set up, we go back to Carson, California, outside Los Angeles again, which is this, well, people aren't going to go there, but what if you had a 5K road race leading into the track meet, so that part of your entry fee to the road race is now go to the track meet?
Right, right. That's brilliant.
Right.
Brilliant.
So that way, that's roads to the track, and then at the Boston Marathon, and Spencer, we see this, because the finish line's already set up on Boylston Street, the bleachers are all up and it's all set up. The Sunday before the Monday race, there's 8 cities and towns through which the marathon run, from Hopkinton to Boston. Well, they take 2 kids from all those cities and towns, the best 2 boys and best 2 girls, and then we have a road mile. But it's not a back and forth, it's around the block. And nobody cares what times they run, and because there's a lot of turns, it's always very close and it's a very sprint finish and exciting. Well, everyone fills the bleachers, and we have the kids run the high school miles, and then we bring the pros out, and then you have the top women's race and the top men's race. Well, that's bringing track to the roads. And next thing you know, these people who were there for the marathon get all pumped up and maybe identify some other stars on the track who they might want to see next time there's a track meet on television or in the area.
Yeah.
I think
Spencer.
we've seen a number of road miles. I mean, and it's kind of, you don't see that many anymore. And there's a great opportunity.
It doesn't take
there.
that long.
It doesn't. You don't need to close down.
No offense,
the
Wilson. No offense.
You don't
No
need to close the center of London down for 6 hours. You need
Right.
to close it down for 20 minutes at tops. You know, and there's some ideas that we were discussing at dinner last night. But there's an opportunity of just.
And the other thing, when you're thinking about that, again, I go back to Honolulu used to have the Waikiki Mile, and they never had a sub 4-minute mile for some reason in the state of Hawaii. So they were going to start at the top of Waikiki Beach and then run down to the marathon finish line in a straight shot, like the New York Fifth Avenue Mile. I said, no, you don't want to do that. You want to mass your assets. Your assets are your crowd. So you go out a half mile, turn around, come back, close the loop. They said, we'll lose 2 seconds, 3 seconds on the turn with the deceleration and the reacceleration.
Okay.
I said, the crowd will drive them.
Exactly.
They were 5 deep. They were hanging off all the hotels. They're coming off the beach. Well, we had 3 or 4 men under 4 minutes, 3 or 4 women under 4:30. It was thrilling. If you're going to run a road mile, keep the course as tight as you possibly can, because it's just a road competition. Who cares what the time it is? So make it exciting. Your crowd is your asset. That's who you're appealing to, not the athletes. You're probably paying them a little bit to be there, so forget about them. They're the pawns moving around the chessboard. The fans, that's who we're after.
And number 5, track and field requires rights owners to both create and deliver world-class events. Now, I know we've spent a lot of today talking about the grassroots, but there is something to be said, and I know that it got discussed yesterday, about the importance of having world-class events so that some of the youngsters can sort of look and say, listen, I saw so-and-so compete in my home country, and that's the day I decided I wanted to do that event.
You know, I think the importance of it is that in a world of today with what television is, if you're not putting on world-class events, people will turn on the football from Europe, the basketball from the United States,
Yes.
the rugby or the football this afternoon, because that's world-class events. So if you're not giving them the best, they're not going to watch it. There's too much else on offer.
No question about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank all of our panelists and ask them to exit the stage so that we can close the show.
Thank you very much. And